Welcome to a very special edition of the Neon Jazz interview series. On this edition, we had the pleasure of interviewing legendary drummer Jack DeJohnette. At age 72, he is still going strong in the world of music and jazz. He was very open about his life in music with us. He talked about starting out on the piano as a boy in Chicago, then moving on to the drums and onto the stage with bebop legends like Miles Davis and Thelonius Monk. Along the way, he had a wise arsenal of stories and insight about a life of music that has treated him well, and he's done the same for his fan base, with countless albums and songs of quality. Dig it, my friends. The first question I want to ask you, I know you're a busy man on a regular basis, you have a lot of projects going on, but I want to ask you first and foremost, talk to me a little bit about your album Special Edition and your work with the trio of Ravi Coltrane and Matthew Garrison.
Yeah, I mean, the Special Edition, that was released actually by Manfred Eicher on ECDM. It's just a collection of different personnel of Special Edition, I think, from I forgot the exact what it was about, over a 4-year period. It was called a Special Edition of box set. So, I was glad that came out because it would give other people who weren't familiar with me as a composer to get familiar with my music, those who hadn't heard it. So, yeah, Special Edition was ensemble which featured either 2 horns or 3 horns, so that I could write some ensemble music in terms of getting a bigger sound from a small ensemble. That was one of the purposes of it. I was utilizing various contemporary musicians, Arthur Blythe, David Murray, and Howard Johnson, John Purcell, just to name a few. And then, the group changed later, and I had Lonnie Plaxico, Ray Osby, and Jerry Thomas, and Mick Goodrich. And Mick Goodrich left, and Michael Caine came in, and that group stayed together for about 6 years. So it was a long run. Really happy about that, yeah.
And the one thing that I wanted to know about the trio, you play with John Coltrane, to play with Ravi and Matthew. What is that like?
It's part of the tradition. It's also part of now. So it's about all of that connected and moving forward. Matthew's instrument is electric bass and electronics, so that adds a contemporary aspect to the group. Ravi has worked with me in other situations in the Jack DeJohnette group sometimes. And we've worked together with his brother Alice, along with Charlie Hayden. So, having known their parents and then watching them develop, it just seemed a natural thing to do. We got together about 20 years ago at the Brooklyn Museum of Art and played a concert.
Okay.
It was mostly a lot of John Coltrane's music, but the emphasis is on coming out of the tradition, some of Coltrane's things, some of our things, and spontaneous improvisations.
So I'm going to go back to the beginning of your life here in Chicago. You started playing the piano at 4. Then you played the drums at 14. Why did it take you so long to get to that instrument of the drums?
Yeah, it was later than 14. I started playing them then. Later, maybe a few years later. Well, it wasn't a question of taking so long. It was just a matter of when I got interested in them. I started playing them in CBS High School, playing in the marching band and concert band. Playing snare drum, bass drum, and I had a combo, and the drummer left his drums in our basement, 78 in Indiana, and my and I started to mess around with them, and it became natural to me. So it didn't take me long to get that independence, and so I started playing both of them. I spent a lot of time developing my technique and listening and playing with records so that I could have my drums that equal to the level of my piano playing. So consequently, I started to get hired on both instruments.
Yeah. So, is your first real love the piano?
I don't know if you'd say it was a real love, but it was the first instrument that I took to without an early age. I think music was my first love.
What was that first live experience in front of a big crowd like for you? Were you nervous? Did it seem natural? What was going through your head?
I never was nervous. And in fact, playing for an audience is just really a great high, So it just helped me play better.
So during the mid-1960s, you were in the Chicago jazz scene. You were really kind of getting involved with it. What was that scene like? How much did you grow by being a part of that scene at the time?
Well, Chicago, next to New York, was one of the premier places for music, and a lot of guys from New York came through Chicago, and also from St. Louis and from the South. It was the sort of stop-off point, halfway point for people who were on their way to New York. At that time, there were lots of clubs to play in, and there were jam sessions, and I was playing all over the place. I played cocktail bars, I played clubs, I played dances, and so there was a lot of availability of all kinds of music that one could participate in. I mean, Joe Siegel had the jazz showcase, and he had things going on at the Sutherland Lounge. His venues have moved around Chicago over the last 50 years, but he was important in fact that he kept the music and still keeps big name and local talent exposed in the Chicago area. Anyway, there were musicians like Ira Sullivan, Nicky Hill, Wilbur Campbell, great William Campbell, Jody Christian. Eddie Harris, to name a few, Vaughn Freeman, and of course, Richard Abrams, Moscow Mitchell, Henry Threadgill, Malachi Favors, to name a few people. And Moore was founder and developer of the AACM, that's for Chicago. Yeah. So I was around. We were all around when that happened, and we were all kind of going. Well, everybody but Moore. We were going to Wilson Junior College, which now has another name now. Doing music major and stuff. And also, Anthony Braxton was also around then too. So, it was fertile ground for developing, many different directions in playing jazz and improvisational music, composition.
In 1968, when you joined Miles Davis's group, was that a huge leap for you musically as far as your growth and where you were going to go?
Yeah, I mean, before that, the big leap for me was when I started with John Coltrane and Keith Richards in Chicago and played 3 tunes. So that was pivotal for me to know that my level was good enough to sustain, playing 3/4 of a set with John.
Yeah.
Of which later on, after I moved to New York, I went back to Chicago with him with an expanded group of his with Darryl Saunders and Alice and
Yeah.
And Eddie Carter, Bill Evans, and Freddie Hubbard. And so, yeah, I was working quite a lot when I came to New York. My house was well, actually the first big international group that I, played was the Charles Lloyd Quartet, which is very important. It's around the time Miles had his group with Tony. So, I mean, that was first big break with Keith Jarrett and Cecil McBee and myself.
What did you learn from being in bands and gigging with people like Miles Davis and Thelonius Monk and Sonny Rollins? What did they teach you when you were on stage about how to play and how to approach a gig?
Well, just be prepared to play what you don't know, don't play it, like something else. You always, most progressive musicians have that same conceptual attitude. Always looking for something that you haven't played and you won't play again.
It always seems to me as though you're experimenting and reaching for new levels of jazz each and every project you get into. Is that a pretty accurate representation of what you do as a musician?
It's not just jazz, it's like on my website, it's experimental, it's world music. Jazz is a big part of that, but it's pretty broad,
Leading the touring quartet of you, Mr. Holland, Mr. Herbie Hancock, and Pat Metheny on Parallel Realities, what was that like? What was recording with those guys like?
Well, it was great. I mean, Pat's really was very helpful in that he co-produced that album again, and then we consequently were able to do a world tour with the addition of Dave Holland on the acoustic bass. So that was incredible. That was an incredible combination. And Pat and I, he's a great producer, so he helped very much in that production and helped write some compositions. And when we toured, the addition of Dave Holland just expanded it even more. So we were able to perform quite a few of those pieces live.
Right.
Along with the things. So yeah, that was a very exciting group, and everybody was on fire every night. So it's like really, really constant, intense high all the time.
Cool.
Incredible level of joy and musicianship.
So you've been involved in a lot of different levels of making music. The Native American culture, what inspired you about that culture to make that music?
There is some native blood in my family, but I was always interested. We were always interested in that. And my wife Lydia and I were sort of in a B&B at a lake, and we looked up in the sky, and then there was a cloud in the form of a wolf with a feather in its ear, smiling at us. And we both saw it. And, my wife had some messages that said, take back to the Indians. So, to condense this, we wound up going to Cattaraugus reservation up near Buffalo, New York, and met an elder there named Grandma Twyla Nietzsche, who was part of the Wolf Clan and Seneca Nation up there. So we went up there, and my wife and I and our two children, and we were initiated into the Wolf Clan. And from her, I got she had a book called Other Council Pirates Were Here Before Us, and that inspired me to do the recording music for the Fifth World.
And as I mentioned about all the genres you've been involved with, jazz, Latin, fusion, Native American, what do you really levitate more towards? What really gets you going these days? What genre do you like the most?
It doesn't matter, man, as long as it's great. As long as it speaks to me. If it speaks to me, I don't care what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I resonate with it, then I'm in.
Right on. Is there a difference between the way you approach the stage today versus the way you did when you started out playing on the proverbial stage?
No, actually, I'm just more relaxed, more comfortable with myself when I play.
Do you like being famous? Do you like being a well-known musician and being recognized out in the world?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with it. I don't let it necessarily go to my head. I mean, I'm 72 years old, so, it's like, I'm grateful that people appreciate what I'm doing. But, I have to keep growing and changing, so I'm not resting on my laurels. I still have lots of things to do.
So when you wake up every day, what's the greatest part of being you?
Just being happy I'm still here.
Cool.
That I can appreciate it, that I'm still here.
What do you try to teach the musicians you play with all of your wisdom and the journeys you've been down and the incredible music you've made? What do you try to give to these musicians?
Well, I get musicians who can think for themselves, and I give trust, and inspire them to reach beyond what they normally will be reached. And in turn, I get inspired by their ability to try to expand, to expand actually, yeah. And then therefore, it's a sort of say a give and take back and forth between the younger musicians and the older musicians, which is part of the tradition.
What musician has taught you the most about music? Over the years, you played with legends, you played with every kind of person. What musician really pops out in your head that really taught you the most, not only about being a musician, but about living this life?
Oh, that's Richard Abrams.
What was it that he taught you?
Well, he just taught you that there were no limitations. Like if you apply yourself, you can do anything. And Mulhall is an example of that. He taught himself how to compose, write for orchestra, play the clarinet, and other instruments. And, he did that by going to the library and getting information.
Yeah.
And he was inspiration. He did it without having to spend thousands of dollars in schools to do that. He just said, you can learn all this for free. You just go down to the library at that time. You can just get the information, and that's what he did. No, he's very wide open. He's not into any compartmentalization of music. And I think sometimes the term free jazz gets used mistakenly,
Yeah.
Music that doesn't have chord changes is sometimes considered free, but it's not necessarily. I mean, it's just musicians who have learned the rules and then broke those rules and then applied those to improvisation are, spontaneous composers. And you could say the word free are predisposed to compose. Written architecture or with, composing on the spur of the moment.
Of all the musicians you played with over the years, is there anybody that's not with us anymore that you miss? Or is there somebody that you really wanted to play with and haven't played with yet?
I missed Miles, but who else? I think I played with most everybody. All the legends, So Jimi Hendrix. Jimmy's music was more jazz than it was rock. Because his drummer, Mitch Mitchell, and Ginger Baker, those guys, they were jazz drummers. They were jazz drummers. They applied that sensibility to rock, you know.
So your first answer was Miles. What was it about, what do you miss about performing with him? What was it like being on stage with somebody that was such a force in music?
Oh, it was incredible, you know, but also being on stage with people like, you know, with Herbie and Ron and Wayne, but also Chick Corea and Dave Holland, you know. I mean, everybody was up to his level, you know, and he raised his level, so, you know, and trusted, you know. I was just taught you how to be focused when you played, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the way he was.
You performed to thousands and thousands of fans. What's the nicest thing that a fan has ever said to you?
Well, they said, listen, you know, I don't know much about jazz. I don't know what that was, but I really liked it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that, without labeling it, that was great. I like that.
So at 72 years of age, you've seen a lot in this world. You've been around for a long time. And for a fan, I find longevity to be as alluring as the quality of music that comes out. What has been the key to your longevity?
Well, you know, I just love what I do. You know, I get inspiration and energy from it.
If people like John Coltrane, Miles Davis, Thelonius Monk, if they were still around today, what kind of music do you think they would be making?
I wouldn't even go there, man. You know, I mean, that's just, you know, with the stuff that they left here, there's still so much in there.
Yeah.
To be learned from that, you know.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even dare anticipate what that would be. I do know that, you know, those of us who experienced them on record and played with them live are still carrying on that legacy.
You've done so many incredible things in your career. What's left to accomplish? Is there anything that specifically or in an ambiguous sense that you want to accomplish?
Well, just to improve my playing, my piano playing, my reading, and my technique, harmony and theory, things like that.
So fans, critics, and people all over the place say you're one of the greatest drummers to ever grace jazz and music in general. What do you say to that? How do you feel about that?
I said thank you.
That's a beautiful spot for us to end there, because I want to thank you, Jack, for your time today. That's all I have. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the USA, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to the legendary Jack DeJohnette for his time, wisdom, and graciousness. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store, or visit theneonjazz.blogspot.com for all things Neon Jazz. Until next time, enjoy the music, my friends.
Neon Jazz.